And finally tonight, as promised, a special comment about the campaign remarks made this weekend and today by the governor of Alaska. Last Wednesday, sheriff's deputies arrived at the home of a woman in Akron, Ohio named Addie Polk in order to evict her. After 38 years in that house, Ms. Polk had fallen behind on paying the mortgage. It was so bad that the company that held the mortgage, Fannie Mae, had foreclosed. In fact, it was far worse than anybody knew. Addie Polk couldn't bear it anymore. So rather than be evicted, she shot herself in the chest. Evidently, she will survive. And after Congressman Dennis Kucinich brought her plight to the floor of the House, Fannie Mae, that mortgage giant you and I and all the rest of us pretty much own now, agreed it would forgive Addie Polk's debt. And when she gets out of the hospital, let her go back and live in her home again. That this is already a gothic horror story, you will agree, but I left out one detail. Addie Polk is 90 years old. In the self-pronounced area of expertise of the governor of Alaska, energy, the real experts of both parties are at a loss to figure out any way, even drill baby drill, that might actually lower gas prices before 2018. We are at war in two countries, and a lame duck president with no reason to check his own imbalance still has dreams of one more. And a 90-year-old woman trapped in the middle of a financial meltdown shoots herself, and she is still in better shape than is the economy. Yet the governor of Alaska wants to talk about somebody Barack Obama does not know very well, and what this somebody Barack Obama does not know very well did during the year Obama was 8 and the year the governor of Alaska was in pre-kindergarten. And she wants to talk about Reverend Jeremiah Wright, and she doesn't object to being introduced with a reference to Barack Obama's middle name. Well, this is my suggestion. In much the same way we, America, in the corporate persona of Fannie Mae, have forgiven poor Addie Polk of Akron, Ohio, we, America, also need to forgive poor Sarah Palin of Wasilla, Alaska. They are both in situations that are beyond their ability to cope. They are both stuck in a crucible caused by forces they cannot comprehend. They are both unable to understand what they are doing. After stumbling through a clumsier version of it at Englewood, Colorado, the governor of Alaska said Saturday at Carson, California, quote, "Our opponent is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to pal around with terrorists who targeted their own country." She later defended the remark by adding this was an association that has been known but hasn't been talked about. Governor, conservative groups thus far have spent $10 million this year trying to make something, anything, out of the brief interaction on a charity board between Senator Obama and a rehabilitated former domestic radical from the 60s. And not even conservatives have been stupid enough to buy the snake oil that this was either a close relationship or a nefarious one. But of course, you know better, Governor. You're smarter than the rest of us. A reporter asks you a horrible gotcha question like, which newspapers do you read? And it takes you 4 days to come up with an answer, and somehow it's the reporter's fault. The reporter then asks you to name one Supreme Court ruling with which you disagree other than Roe v. Wade, and even though you'd commented on just such a case, from Alaska no less, not 3 months ago, your eyes turn into a big neon sign reading vacancy, and you insist it's because that evil media asked you the wrong question. So you're the genius, Governor, and it's your supporters and the undecided voters who are the dopes who are now going to believe the same Mickey Mouse crap that Senator Clinton couldn't get to stick and Sean Hannity couldn't get to stick just because it's you adding that word terrorist and that phrase palling around and dropping the G in palling. And of course, Governor, those same dopes and we, the media morons, we are not smart enough to ask about that pesky Alaskan Independence Party and why you recorded a speech for its convention last March and why your husband remained a registered member of it until 2002, even though it was founded by a man named Joe Vogler, who wanted Alaska to secede from the United States. Secede, the way the South seceded, precipitating the Civil War. This is the same Joe Vogler who once said, "The fires of hell are frozen glaciers compared to my hatred for the American government, and I won't be buried under their damn flag." And who also said, "I'm an Alaskan, not an American. I've got no use for America or her damned institutions." Shoot, Governor, them strong words, huh? Did he wink as he said them? You betcha. So where does Joe Vogler rank on the scales of terrorists who would target their own country, Gov? Your opponent's guy, Ayers, wound up on a volunteer anti-poverty committee in Chicago. But your guy, Vogler, he wound up founding a group that wanted to rip one of the stars off the American flag. Okay, Governor, Vogler is more your husband's guy. So it's your husband who's been palling around with terrorists who would target their own country. But I'm assuming you've been palling around with your husband. But gee willikers, Governor, you know what's best here. You're not one of those Washington insiders who would notice that though there's a straight line connecting you, your husband, and this Alaskan secessionist, you're standing under a banner with the campaign slogan, "Country First." And if somebody out there puts two and two together, they might just ask, which country do you mean? The country of Alaska? The heels are on, you said with another smile. The gloves are off. Well, if you're telling William Crystal you want to talk about Jeremiah Wright, for sure. So, Governor, you don't mind addressing whether this Pastor Muthi is a terrorist, do you? Well, we've told you before about Pastor Thomas Muthi. He's the preacher who visited the Wasilla Assembly of God Church a couple of times while the governor was there. Ironically enough, just about as many times as Bill Ayers has met Barack Obama. And see, there was this one time when Pastor Muthi actually laid hands on the governor, and I'm sure that sounds like just some crazy anecdote, except there's videotape. And of course, the governor talked about this moment, the laying on of hands. Just this last summer she did it. It was in October 2005, as the video indicates, when Muthi puts his hands on Sarah Palin's back and says, "Make a way for Sarah, even in the political arena. Make a way, my God. Bring finances her way, even for the campaign in the name of Jesus. Every form of witchcraft, it will be rebuked in the name of Jesus. Father, make her way now." And the governor said that bold approach of Pastor Muthi was one of the reasons she became governor. And she gives him just oodles of credit for putting her on the path. The problem for the governor is that in 1999, the Christian Science Monitor newspaper reported that Pastor Muthi had gotten his start a decade earlier in Kenya, in the Nairobi suburb of Kiambu. Kiambu was crime-ridden. So this character Muthi shows up and announces it was the fault of the woman in town who he had decided was a witch. And Muthi gave the witch a choice, either be saved or get out of town. And the woman initially chose none of the above, but this became less than a viable option when Muthi got 200 of the townspeople together and they decided, heck, you know, Muthi's right. She probably is a witch. And the next thing you know, the police are raiding her house and reportedly shooting her snake because if she was a witch, the snake had to be a demon. And then the woman left town and everybody said crime went down and most of the bars closed. And this is not only how Pastor Muthi got started, but he's proud of it. And he tells the story in his testimonial videotapes. And people in that church in Wasilla where he laid hands on the governor knew all about it. And they think it was just a Joe six-pack hockey mom kind of thing to do. To let a guy who branded some woman in Kenya a witch demand that God make some different woman the governor of Alaska. Governor, what would you call someone who arrives in a suburb, blames one resident for the local crime, organizes a mob to threaten the woman, convinces the authorities to go and raid her home, and then chases her out of the suburb? Come on, Governor, just give us one answer that has something to do with the question you were just asked. That's right. You'd call him a terrorist. And since it was in his own country, that would make him, very good, a domestic terrorist. So, Governor, you've been palling around with terrorists who would target their own country. Say it ain't so, Gov. Say it ain't so. Of course it is. The governor of Alaska ignores Addie Polk and the American tragedy that is a 90-year-old woman shooting herself out of shame and panic and who knows what else over the mortgage. Instead, the governor of Alaska wants to start calling people terrorists and insisting of Senator Obama that, quote, this is not a man who sees America like you and I see America, and whose rhetoric like that and the palling around with terrorists line were rightly described by the Associated Press yesterday as a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of way of slipping racism back into this equation, because it's a nifty trick to remind the white folk that, psst, Obama is black. But overriding this sleaziness, and doggone it, the governor of Alaska has got to be the sleaziest politician working the stage at the moment. There's the sheer blessed stupidity of her letting herself become the bomb thrower when her own life is full of domestic terrorists. Governor, Bill Ayers, your hubby was in this secessionist hate group for which you recorded a video this year. Governor, Jeremiah Wright, that pastor you credit with helping you become governor is either a con man or a psycho who believes he can tell which woman in the village is the witch and which woman is the governor. And, Governor, there's also the U.S. Council on World Freedom. You should ask Senator McCain about that outfit and why he had to scat away from it 22 years ago. Or ask the senator why yesterday his own brother Joe McCain referred to Northern Virginia as, quote, communist country. Or you could ask the senator about pastors John Hagee and Rod Parsley. Or about why Senator McCain said introducing Jeremiah Wright into this campaign, quote, there's no place for that kind of campaigning. The American people don't want it, period. Or don't ask. You know best. You're the one selling the patent medicine. Those of us out here, we're just the suckers pulling out our greenbacks. Go on talking about this man Ayers and trying to link Obama to that word terrorist. But be prepared for others to ask you about your pastor and terrorism, and for still others to ask you about the first dude and terrorism. But not me, Governor. I forgive you. You are about as guilty here as poor Ms. Addie Polk in Akron, Ohio. And I hope that after whatever you've done to yourself, you recover as well as she seems to be doing, and that you too get to go back and live in your own home again. Because if you think the terrorism con and the racism sting are going to do anything but bury you and Senator McCain, you need to pick up one of those, how many ever newspapers you read, what was it, Infinity? And check the headlines to find out what people are really worried about right now. Otherwise, when you said the heels are on, the gloves are off, you got as close to telling the truth as you've ever gotten, and without really knowing it. Because for you and Senator McCain, Governor Palin, it's not just the gloves that came off. Obviously, it's the wheels.